In today's video, I've got some simple and creative DIYs using Dollar Tree wood to bring a little spring into your home. For the first DIY, I'll be using 3 of these thick rectangular wood blocks from Dollar Tree to make an adorable little wooden book stack for spring. I really love how thick and sturdy these blocks are. I'll be stacking them on top of each other, and here I'm just making sure I have the side of the blocks that I like, and so I'm just checking out all the sides to see which one looks best. I'm going to be painting the blocks different colors, so I picked some light pastel shades that give off those spring vibes. For the first block, I'll be painting this really pretty lilac paint from Faux. This is actually a paint and sealer in one, which is perfect because this is going to be on the top of the stack and it will just give it that extra protection. I'm using a sponge brush and it just goes on so beautifully. I'm going to be painting the top surface and the sides, leaving the bottom unpainted since I'll be applying glue there. I did about 2 coats for a nice even coverage. Once that's done, I set it aside to dry because in a bit, I'll be applying a decorative stencil to give it some pretty detail. For the second block, I'll be painting it white using Waverly's white chalk paint. Since this block is going to be in the center of the stack, I'm just focusing on painting the sides, so this one was super quick to do. I'll be Mod Podging a decorative napkin over it, but before I get to that, I'm going to paint the final bottom block in moss green from Waverly. This shade is so beautiful. It's a rich, earthy, rustic green. It's so pretty. And since this is going to be the bottom block, I figured I'd go ahead and paint the bottom side too, just to finish it off nicely. I'm not planning to add any wording, so now I have the option to flip it over and make it the top. Now that the paint has completely dried, I'm ready to add some fun details to them. For the lilac block, I'll be adding an antique looking metallic sticker on the side. It has some really nice detailing and I get these at Dollar Tree. I use them often and I happen to have one that was narrow enough to fit perfectly on the side. I just stick it on, but for extra security, you can always add a little glue underneath. I'm painting right over it with the same lilac paint, but honestly, this wasn't really part of my original plan. Otherwise, I would have attached the sticker first and then painted the whole block. But you know, you can always leave it unpainted, or you could also paint it white before attaching the sticker. I think that contrast would have looked really nice too. On the top of the block, I'll be adding some stenciling. This is a 3-pack stencil set from Walmart, and I'll be using the leaf design. I'm using white chalk paint for this, and so I taped the stencil down securely. I dip my brush in the paint and remove any excess on a paper towel, and then I stipple lightly over the stencil, applying the paint in thin layers to avoid any bleeding underneath. It's important to build up the color gradually, adding just a little paint at a time. Now, I'm not going for a solid heavy look with the stencil. I want the design to feel softer and more subtle, so I'm applying the paint lightly in some areas for a more delicate finish. So far, I'm so happy with how this one's looking. I love all the details. For the green block, I'm using another stencil from a Walmart pack. I'm going with the white chalk paint again for this one. Walmart does have some really nice stencils at a great price, and I love how this turned out too. It has that vintage old storybook vibe. For the middle one, I'm going to Mod Podge this pretty floral napkin on it. I got it at Michael's, and I just love the soft pastel colors. I think it'll complement the other 2 blocks perfectly. So the first step is to carefully separate the layers of the napkin. I only need the top layer since that's where the design is. Once I have that, I'm cutting out the part of the napkin I want to use. Next, I'm applying a generous amount of Mod Podge to the narrow side of the wood where I want the napkin to go. I'm also spreading a bit onto the edge of the wider side to help the napkin tuck in smoothly and create a cleaner finish once it's applied. Now I'll be using the iron-on method to attach the napkin. So once the Mod Podge is completely dry, I place the napkin on top of the wood where I've applied the glue. To protect the napkin, I'm placing a piece of parchment paper over that. The heat reactivates the glue and that helps to bond the napkin to the wood. Then I'm just carefully running my mini heat press, you can also use an iron, over the parchment paper. And in the end, you get a really smooth, seamless finish with no wrinkles or bubbles. And after that, I just sand off the overhang. And finally, I glue everything together. I'm using wood glue for a strong, secure hold with a bit of hot glue here and there just to give it that quick grip while it sets. So I just stack the wood blocks on top of each other, making sure they're lined up just right. You can leave it as is. You can also embellish with some ribbon or jute string. I love how this turned out. Each block is so unique, and I think that's what makes it even better. I love that they all don't match perfectly, and it gives it such a charming, eclectic feel. For the next decor DIY, I'm using this square piece of wood from Dollar Tree. It has a raised 3D design on the front, but I'm actually going to use the back instead. I want to add some stenciling to the wood to create a light background design. I got this stencil set on Amazon and it came in a pack of 6. I'll be using one of them for this project. Now it was a bit thin and I actually thought it was going to be a little bigger, but it still worked out well. They're very pretty designs. I'll be using white chalk paint, and I decided to leave the wood as is instead of painting it. I could have added a bit more contrast by either painting the wood or using a different stencil color, but I really wanted the design to be subtle in the background. I didn't want it to stand out too much since I'm going to be placing a wreath on top. So I'm starting in the center and I tape the stencil down to keep it from shifting while I work. I lightly load my brush with paint, making sure to dab off any excess so it doesn't bleed under the stencil. Then using a soft dabbing motion, I start applying the paint over the design, gradually building it up. By the way, this video is part of a spring Easter collab hosted by Liana DIY. I am so honored to be the guest host alongside Indiana Jones. We also have Lori Bly DIY and DIY Next Door joining in, and I'll have the playlist linked below along with their channels, so be sure to check it out for more spring inspiration. Okay, once I finish the section in the middle, I shift the stencil over to the left. I line it up to connect the design, and then I just continue stenciling. And I keep going until the whole wood square is covered, and honestly, this was super easy to do. The design is super light, maybe a little hard to see with my lighting, but I'm really loving how it's coming along. On top of the wood square, I'll be placing this Dollar Tree frame, and it was just the perfect size. So I'm just turning it over and removing the backing board. And then I'm just pulling out with my pliers all the metal tabs, and those pop right out so easily. To attach to the wood, I started by applying hot glue all over the frame. I really thought that would be enough to hold it, but I was wrong. The frame isn't real wood, or maybe I was too slow and the glue dried too quickly, but either way, it popped off. So I switched to using Titebond Quick and Thick glue with some hot glue here and there for that instant bond. Then I clamped it all around and gave it some time to dry, and yeah, that worked much better. I'll be adding a cute little wreath on top using this gold metal hoop. I'm decorating it with some beautiful flowers I pulled from a Dollar Tree bouquet, keeping it soft and simple. So I'm going to be gluing a couple of these leaves together, making sure they're going in opposite directions. I'm just adding the glue to the stems, making sure there's a little space in the center, and I'll make 2 of these. Before I start gluing the flowers onto the hoop, I noticed it was looking a little brassy and faded in some areas, so I'm just going to use some Rub and Buff wax to give it a bit of a refresh. I'm using a piece of cloth to apply that on the hoop, so now that's looking much better. I thought I'd add these little pink fuchsia colored flowers behind the leaves. They're so pretty and dainty, and I'm just going to add them to one of the glued leaves. And then I'm wrapping some jute string around the center, and this will make it easier to glue some flowers in the middle, and it also cleans it up. And from there, I'm wrapping it around the metal hoop to attach it and hold it in place. I'm also securing it in with more hot glue. Next, I'm going to add a couple of flowers in the center. I love these flowers. They're very simple, but they really complete the look, and they just tie everything together. For the next set of glued leaves, I'm just gluing them directly onto the hoop, then wrapping some jute string around the center. This one isn't going to be as full as the one in the bottom, but it's going to complement it and help balance out the wreath. I'm just placing one flower in the center, and then I'm adding some baby's breath around the flower to add more texture and fill in the empty spaces. I'll be using some wooden letters from Michaels and Dollar Tree to spell out Hello Spring, and I'll be placing them on top of a couple giant popsicle sticks, and I just trimmed off the ends a bit so it's flat and not curved. I'll be using the word hello from this wooden word pack from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be giving the words a coat of white paint. For the craft sticks, I'm staining them with some Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm applying it with a damp cloth so that it goes on smoothly and it gives it a nice even finish. To glue together, I'm just adding some glue on this small craft stick, and I'm placing that right in the center like so. And I did also add a couple more going vertically on the ends. Next, I'm gluing the letters down using some wood glue to attach them, and I'm just spacing it out before gluing. I really like how the words have different fonts. It just makes it look even better. I decided to add some jute string on the areas of the hoop where I'm going to add glue. So I'm just wrapping about 1 inch in length on both sides. And then I apply some hot glue on top of the string, and then I placed a wooden sign right on top of that. Then I add some more glue on the back of the wrapped jute string, and then I glue that onto the wood board. I added a few more flowers in some areas. I thought it needed a few more. You can add a string hanger on the back or just lean it against the wall. For the final DIY, I'll be using this blank rectangle MDF board from Dollar Tree. It kind of has that shiplap detail on the front. I'll also be using the 17-inch wood plank from Dollar Tree. Now I actually needed 2 for this project, but thank goodness I had a little piece left over from a past project, which was just the amount that I needed. I'm going to trim the wood plank in half, and I want 2 equal pieces without the holes. And so I just measure, mark, and then trim it. I use my miter box and saw to trim, but you can also use a utility knife and a metal ruler to score it until it breaks. For the base, I'll be using this Dollar Tree board, and I'm going to trim it to the exact length of the cut wood. And I want to make sure it's the exact size, or even a little under that, but I just don't want it to go over. I'm going to be making a rustic planter box that kind of looks like an old distress drawer. For the wood plank, I start by adding some stain to it, and this is dark walnut from Varathane. I'm just applying 1 light coat over it, which covered the wood nicely. So after that, I just set it aside to dry. For the MDF board, I'm using Decor satin enamel in the shade Seaside Blue, which I thought would complement that stained wood nicely. This is such a beautiful color, and I want the paint to look a bit weathered, and so I'm just dry brushing that over the board, making sure to still let some of that wood underneath peek through. Now, I was going to leave the stain planks as is with the stain, but when I put it together to see what it would look like, it was nice, but it just kind of looked like a real drawer. And I wanted it to look like a weathered decorative drawer. So I decided to paint the stain plank Seaside Blue as well, but still letting some of that dark wood underneath peek through. So we shall see in a bit how it turns out. On the shiplap board, I'm going to add a vintage looking metal pole that I had. I drilled a couple of pilot holes so I could attach the drawer pulls. I marked where the holes needed to be so that it's centered and then drilled them. Once that was done, I attached the metal pole and screwed it into place. It's such a beautiful detail. To add the base, I'll be using 4 tumbling taro blocks from Dollar Tree. I'm applying some glue on the sides of the blocks, and then I'm applying them on the bottom corners, making sure it's flush on the bottom and side. And I'm attaching the blocks on both of the rectangle wood. The tower block will help hold up the base as well as connect the boards together. Now to assemble, I'm applying glue on the edges of the rectangle wood like so, as well as on the tower blocks, and I'm adding the glue on all 4 sides. Then I stand it up, and to keep it from falling over, I place a couple wood blocks behind them. From there, I place a base in the center, letting it rest on the tower blocks. And then I just push the sides together, and then I attach the front and the back. Now you can add more blocks in the bottom for more security. I did end up doing that, or even add some on the inside. And this one's all done. Now you can place whatever you want inside, some fresh flowers, greenery, or even a small succulent arrangement. Let me know what you would put inside. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed all these quick spring DIYs. Let me know which one was your favorite and what kind of DIY project you would like to see next. Don't forget to check out the playlist link below. Until next time, bye!